Dude, we haven't seen each other in like 2.5 years, man. How you been doing?
Doing wonderful. Thank you so much for asking.
All right, man. How's everything? How's Massive Act?
Massive Act is kicking ass.
Okay.
There's been a lot of publicity going on as a result of this conference we've been speaking at. A lot of interest amongst the bands, and looking forward to the California Dreaming Tour.
Cool. That's great. This is your second time in Colombia, right?
Third trip.
Okay, this is the third trip.
Yeah.
All right. How do you like it so far?
I love it.
The conference circuit, what do you think of it?
Very impressive.
Yeah?
Frankly, yeah. Not used to being this popular.
Okay. So what you've been up to? What have you been up to?
Well, I've still got my day job at Manifold Technology. We build blockchains for financial institutions and banks. I'm starting a business in my spare time doing a coffee importation here from Colombia.
Cool.
Caldas and Chinchina.
Oh, amazing.
See, and that's actually where we're at before we got into Bogota.
That's great, man. You got to let me have some of that coffee.
You got it.
Listen, talk to me in very simple terms about blockchain, because it's something that I really don't know anything about.
Sure. Really, if we want to break it down to its most basic level, blockchain is a way of organizing transactions, data, if you will, over time, and being able to be sure that any modifications to it after the fact will be very obvious. It uses some really tricky math and cryptography. So if you take something out, put it in, it breaks the chain.
Okay, and how does it work in everyday life?
Well, that's the thing. This is a very incipient technology. Like, this is brand new. So the real day-to-day applications are just now coming into view. Most popular, obviously, is Bitcoin. I'm sure everyone's heard of that, but that's just...
Tell me a little bit about where Bitcoin is standing right now. There's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of news going on about Bitcoin going down and not really happening like many people thought it was going to.
I mean, people have been saying that since its inception, almost 10 years ago. I mean, I remember when the white paper was first published by the anonymous dude, Satoshi Nakamoto, describing it back in 2009, and thinking, that's interesting, but not really having a specific use case for it. And it wasn't really until like 2012-13 I started paying a lot closer attention and jumped into this because I can see it changing the world.
How did you get there?
Into the industry?
Yeah.
I was called by a recruiter. So I was working for a different startup in Silicon Valley, and the company I'm at right now just landed a big contract with the Royal Bank of Canada, and I was brought on board to help support the implementation of that technology in their headquarters in Toronto. Where
does Bitcoin begin?
Well, it begins with the software. It begins with the code. What makes it really cool is that it's a completely new way of achieving consensus among participants in any system, in that we can trust the math instead of having to necessarily trust a higher third party. So what makes that cool is traditionally, if I want to send you money, we'd have to go to a bank, right?
Right.
And what the bank does is they're going to charge a fee for the top of that. Because we've got this new model of commerce, we can conduct business directly without having to have someone sitting on top taking a slice of that transaction from it.
How close is Bitcoin from actually replacing the current currency system around the globe?
Oh, we've got a long ways to go.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like you can go down to the bodega and pick up a Coca-Cola and pay with Bitcoin, right?
Right.
But with respect to international commerce, there's a lot of people who have seen the friction that's in place. A lot of the banks, they make money right now just sitting on top, taking their slices. They make money doing nothing. And so it's the opportunity to disintermediate, to take them out of the equation if we can move to this new paradigm of fiscal policy. But will it happen? I don't know, man. There's a lot of powerful people who make a lot of money with the status quo.
Totally.
And so,
what will it take to topple those big, powerful guys?
Well, any revolution, right? It's hard for me to say that there's going to be one single catalyzing event that would do it.
But can it happen? I mean, if there was...
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe the shortest, the most efficient path between 2 points is that of least resistance. If we've got these third parties sitting in between our transactions, taking value from that, there's economic incentives to remove them from the equation.
Okay. How do you extract the value of Bitcoin besides what you just mentioned regarding the code? You know, it's like money. It's hard to understand because it's so metaphysical. You know, it's paper, it's the Federal Reserve, it's gold, it's a whole bunch of stuff. Where does the value of Bitcoin lie?
Where does the value of money lie? Let's start with that. All right. Why does the U.S. dollar have value? I've been told
Isn't it because of gold?
Is it? Because we broke the gold standard in 1971. Nixon did. So it's not. It's fiat. It has value because the government says it has value. It's protected by the full faith of the government. People lose faith in the government. They lose faith in the dollar. And that's why we see demand for Bitcoin in places where there's not as much currency stability, say like South Korea back in the early last year when the tensions with North Korea were ratcheting up. Yeah.
What happened in South Korea with the Bitcoin?
There was such great demand for Bitcoin in South Korea into 2017, just as the market was like shooting up to 20K per Bitcoin, lots of people were making money buying Bitcoin in places where there was low demand, so the prices were low, and taking it over to exchanges in South Korea and selling it at a profit, just doing straight arbitrage, which is a common thing in the financial markets, but fairly new within the cryptocurrency systems.
Does Bitcoin's value rely on the current stock market or the currency value?
It's like the stock market in that the values are based purely on supply and demand. All right. If we think about Bitcoin, what is it when you break it down in its most basic form? It's a spreadsheet. It's a ledger. It's what the accountants use to keep track of who spent what money where. All right. But if we want to take it a step further, you can think of it as magical internet beans. Yeah. It has value because people perceive it to have value.
Okay. And how do you acquire it?
So typically you'd go to a local exchange. The biggest one in the U.S. is called Coinbase. And like when my parents asked me how would I buy Bitcoin, that's what I recommend. I know there's exchanges here in Colombia. It's fourletter.com. I don't remember the exact one off the top of my head, but there's also systems in place where you can buy direct from individuals.
Do you have to have any money to buy Bitcoin?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So what's really unique about Bitcoin is that when the system started, there was no value. There was 0 Bitcoins. Bitcoins are introduced into the system by the computers that are doing the hard math, keeping it secure. The reason you see folks across the world buying specialized computers to do these hard math is because if they get super lucky, they happen to guess the right magic number for that current block, they get a reward of Bitcoin. And when this started in 2009, that was 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. That's how Bitcoin is added into the system. And every so often they have that reward. Currently we're looking at the next drop to 12.5 Bitcoin in 2020, but at current price where we're sitting at 6,500 per pop, that's 80 grand every 10 minutes.
Wow.
And so,
are there any goods and services being traded on Bitcoin right now?
Yes. No, the first biggest use of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency in general, was illegal markets. The fact that there's no trusted third party managing the transactions in this system means that they can't roll it back. So in the case like a government, say you're doing illegal things, you're selling things that you should not be selling, as long as you control your private key, no one can get that money back. You have access to it.
Are there any governments interested in establishing Bitcoin as a currency model right now? Is there anyone in the world thinking about this from a governmental standpoint?
Oh, very much so. And I'm going to draw the distinction between Bitcoin and blockchain in general. Like
Gotcha.
There's a lot of Bitcoin is just a single application of blockchain technology.
Okay.
Governments don't like Bitcoin because they don't have authority over it. Like in the current system, the central banks they have ultimate authority of introducing and taking currency out. One big argument against the move to these cryptocurrency systems is they have a hard cap. There's a total limit of the number of values, amount of Bitcoin introduced into the system.
Cool.
21 million. But
that's currently...
No, that like in 2050, that'll be the last Bitcoin created. Then that's it. That's all that's going to exist, and
21 million.
always just trading it around. Yes.
Okay.
So currently, we're sitting at about 18 million that's been introduced, so we've got 3 million to go.
Okay, and that's going to take place in how many years? 4 years? 2025, you said?
No, well, that's the next drop in the reward, but we should fill up, like run out of that value in 2050 is when the last Bitcoin will be mined, introduced in.
Talk to me about that drop in the reward.
Okay.
Explain.
So the designer of the system, Satoshi Nakamoto, he set up some interesting game theory in order to keep the people keeping the network secure, to play according to the rules. And so these miners, in order to receive these rewards, they have to follow the system. Let me think about how to say this. And it's part of the algorithm that he defined is the reward received for the miners for that Bitcoin. And it.
The same rules.
Hmm?
They are all in the same rules.
Yeah, well, they all have to follow the same rules. I'm just. Give me one moment to collect my thoughts.
Sure.
It's
a complex issue, man.
No, it is.
It's really complex and really hard to grasp for the general public, which is where I think its biggest challenge lies, beyond the government regulations that may appear in the future, or the powerful man in Wall Street who just don't want this to move ahead because of, conflicts of interest and the way the system's being
They make
organized.
money right now with the status quo. Like,
Right, they do.
banks are disincentivized to adopt this new model because it removes power that they currently have.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very hard to get them to play ball. They're not gonna do it. It's
Well, they're doing it because
unless the general public adapts.
Well, the general public can demand it, but the innovation I'm seeing within the financial providers is mostly, from my perspective, seems to be based on fear. They're afraid that they're going to lose control, and so they're spending money to innovate and try and build competing systems that they can still...
What are they working on right now that you know of?
Well, like the system we built for the Royal Bank of Canada was a credit card reward system, and they wanted to allow the exchange of points, say, airline miles for Starbucks.
I got you. I know where that's headed. Okay.
But the distinction between that is it's a private blockchain where they still have authority over it and they can reverse transactions if they need to. And that's not necessarily the case with the public systems, which are secured through proof of work, as in the case of Bitcoin.
Every time a reward system or a point system at an airline or at a bank is presented to the public, are they trying to topple this Nakamoto idea?
Not necessarily, because credit card reward points have been around since the 70s,
Okay.
right? So they're trying to incentivize you to use their credit card because they get a slice of that transaction from the merchant. Like they pay in the U.S. 35 cents and 2.5 or 2.9% on every time you swipe your card, and that's why Visa's stock price is what it is right now. Now, I like it because I don't have to carry a wad of cash. If I get mugged, then I just call my bank, they cancel my credit card.
What would be the perils of entering the Bitcoin market if you were, a regular citizen? Have you looked into the possible hazards or dangers?
Oh, like
Just in the same way you just said you have a wad of cash and you may get mugged. What would happen to you? What are the dangers or the insecurity behind Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, XRP, all of these systems, you assert control over your wallet through control of the private keys. All right, this is how you say, I am authorized to spend this money. And so if, say, a virus gets on your computer that could pull that out, or, you mistakenly expose them to the internet, then you lose control of that wallet. Someone can come in, spend your money, and there's absolutely no recourse because you cannot reverse these transactions after the fact.
Wouldn't a bank be necessary in that regard, in the sense that internet theft is like all over the place.
Absolutely.
Hacking is all over the place. These things, I'm not sure everyone out there with a computer would be able to, safely manage.
Well, and that's to that reason is exactly why I recommend a service such as Coinbase to my parents if they're going to buy Bitcoin, because in that case, the exchange acts as the bank. They manage your private keys for you. Now, there's purists in the Bitcoin world that would say that's absolutely not safe because some of the earlier exchanges, Mt. Gox, back in 2011, they were hacked. They had been commingling all of their user funds together. And so more than half of it was taken out while that happened. And lots of sad people because
God.
they lost, fortunes at the time.
Yeah. They lost real money.
Real money, yes.
my
I
goodness.
mean, you spend $10,000 in real money to get your magical internet beans. Someone takes your magical internet beans. You're still out 10 grand.
Yeah. When you get your internet beans, what do you do with them?
Well, most...
Do they work like stock?
No. Like with stock, you own a percentage of ownership in a company. Some stock will pay you a dividend, right? With Bitcoin, you're just holding a line on a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Right? It says, I have this much value that I can exchange. You can send it to other people if you want. It's perceived as like a hedge against currency risk, like
Okay.
inflation in the U.S. dollar or international currencies. Because, like, say if they decide to start printing 10x the U.S. dollars and the value of the U.S. dollar goes down, well, Bitcoin's real value should stay the same.
Okay. Does it?
Well, it's economics, and this is there's a lot of second and third order effects, but it all boils down to global supply and demand. How many
Right.
people are wanting to buy it right now compared to how many people want to sell right now? Ceteris paribus, supply goes up,
Okay.
prices go down.
Yeah. What about now? Where does it stand? Is it being affected by the dollar? If the dollar is strong, is Bitcoin strong? And if it's weak, is Bitcoin weak? Is this because when you start reading into like the New York Times or the Washington Post about this, you realize that no matter how distant Wall Street may want to be from this particular technology, there's still some units of measurement going on in the stock market. Like you see Bitcoin going up and down,
Yeah, well, I mean, in technology, there's always a trough, right? We have the beginning where you've got the innovators and a big shoot up in excitement, and we call this the peak of illusionment, all right? And then once we get to this point, I call this, and we can see it in the value of this back before the new year, and then a big drop, all right, as people become disillusioned, like, oh, this isn't actually, solving all of the world's problems. It's just a record on a spreadsheet. But now, because lots of people lost, the value is stabilized, right? Over the last 3 months, we've kept it all pretty much between $6,000 and $7,000. We're seeing real technology emerge and real use cases for this. I was reading an article yesterday, the first Bitcoin-backed shipment doing supply chain logistics, which is an excellent use case for blockchain technology, was conducted on Bitcoin just yesterday.
Will it become a solid thing, a material thing? Will it be traded? No, it will always be virtual.
Yeah, it's a distributed computer. So you're just pushing ones and zeros. So you could print a gold Bitcoin, and then you say, hey, if you give me this Bitcoin, I'll exchange for you. But then you're mining, you're managing your own currency. Independent. I don't know what the laws here are in Colombia, but in the U.S., you're not allowed to print your own currency. The government has the sole right to issue and manage that currency.
Same thing happens here. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing. What's going to happen 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now with blockchain and Bitcoin and all this you're talking about?
So I purposely steered my career here because I see this having as big a transformation on the globe as the internet revolution in the early 90s. All right? Like, we don't necessarily have to have these people taking value out of the from the full train, going from start to finish. Like, say, if I want to send money to Colombia, if I'm trying to buy coffee, right? this money's filtering through 4 or 5 banks, and along each step, they're taking their slice of the pie.
Totally.
And so
All the time. No matter what you do, whether it's coffee or just, a money order, a wire transfer.
Exactly. International money transfer, $45. And
Yeah.
I'm
It's
buying
crazy.
coffee right now. And that's one of my life passions is disintermediation. I don't want people between me and what I'm trying to accomplish. I want to do business direct. And so we can build new systems where we can do direct commerce. And, there's some interesting applications like a distributed eBay is out right now. You install software, you can put up a website, a storefront, people can buy, sell from you, and then you're not paying a fee to eBay in order to sell those goods.
What about all those scams out there? How do you keep from buying, fake Bitcoin and stuff like that? Because there's a lot of people out there who don't know a thing about this.
Well, the biggest I would say is go to trusted sources. You have to go to an exchange, read reviews. There was a lot of fraud. There's a whole new way of raising money for companies called an ICO, which is an initial coin offering. And so, end of last year, there was over 10,000 ICOs issued. And to me, it would be weird that there's 10,000 different competing online currencies. I imagine it'll end up like Highlander, where there can only be one.
Okay.
Or maybe 3 or 5 that are doing unique, useful, actual operations.
But that's kind of consolidation you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So I expect to see some consolidation moving over the next 10 years.
Doesn't that apply to the rules of capitalism as we know it? And in that sense, wouldn't you be playing the same game with different toys?
Well, you have to, capitalism seems to be the most efficient method to allocate resources for use in productive enterprises. If we look at failed examples of planned economies, i.e. your neighbors in Venezuela, they'd launched a cryptocurrency last year called the Petro.
Yeah. How's that doing?
I don't know. I'm not going to buy it because if I look to Venezuela, I don't imagine, oh, yes, there's a bastion of good fiscal, responsibility. Let's make sure we get in on that. No. It's got to be solving a real problem.
It's funny because you steer your career towards this incredibly anarchic goal of getting these intermediaries out of the way, literally.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like I said, you're playing with ideas that are economics, basic, economics 101 and capitalism 101. You're talking consolidation. But at the same time, you say, no, but I want the middleman out. So it sounds pretty anarchic. I guess my question is, where do you stand in terms of the politics of Bitcoin and blockchain?
I am pro all of it. I'm a technologist in my heart. With the internet, it brought an information revolution in the early 90s. And I see this in the 2010s being as information was for the internet, the economics is to blockchain. We can put the power out to regular people.
Where is the internet right now? From your standpoint and everything that's happened with net neutrality and regulations and things that seem to jeopardize the freedom of the internet. What's your take on this?
We're experiencing in the U.S. a bit of regulatory capture. And what that means is corporate interests have taken over the regulating entities within the government to enact policies that do not benefit the populace, but benefit the corporatocracy. And that's why net neutrality failed. The current leader of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission in the U.S., is run by a lobbyist who was at Verizon for 10 years before he got the job.
Okay.
Now, do you think he's looking out for my best interests or
Absolutely.
for Verizon's?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And so there's a bit of a political revolution taking place right now because there's folks my age, the millennials, are pissed off that the government's not responding to our demands. They're not taking care of us.
What's Silicon Valley say about all this?
technology will lead us through it.
That's basically it. It's blind faith.
Blind faith. Like
Yeah.
you have you see the cult of Facebook if you get the opportunity to go to their campus, and like their mission is connecting the world. But
How's Facebook doing? You guys are close to Facebook. You've been there. You've talked to people in there. You've worked, alongside them. What's happened?
I gotta say, Facebook was really cool in college when it was a bunch of girls posting party photos, and it got a lot less cool as parents got in. And then now that we're seeing international psychological operations being conducted on our populace in order to affect the outcome of elections, the nefarious potential of that sort of group thought is taking place. People tend to bring they want to reinforce their worldview. And so we're seeing curated news in the case of, like, say, Fox News, where you only see one side of the opinion.
Yeah, you see a pretty evil algorithm, wandering around the internet.
Exactly. And now I know Facebook's spending a lot of money and a lot of time trying to combat this, but I think the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
I mean, I've curtailed my Facebook usage significantly over the last 3 months.
How significantly?
I don't use it.
At all?
Yeah. I've been taking a social media diet.
From Facebook only, or you do Facebook, Twitter? Are you dieting on?
So I mean, I'm more of a Twitter
reader?
leech.
Okay, you just
I
suck
just
on the
read.
information.
Yes, Reddit is probably my biggest source of. I guess I'd call it social media because I enjoy reading the comments on what people have to say. But
If smart people like you are walking away from social media, where are they going? What's the next frontier?
I hope it's face-to-face communication. I like talking to people on the phone. I like, a more, it's neat. Like, I had 80 people wish me happy birthday today. It's my roommate from college from 12 years ago.
But wait a minute. We've had that for 40 years. I mean, no?
Well,
We've had that face-to-face communication, like, pretty much. What kind of face-to-face communication would actually be different? When you say the next step is face-to-face communication, it's funny. It's funny because that's the way it's always been.
Old is new and the new is old. It all kind of like...
Does it always just go in cycles, in circles? Does it always go back to the start?
Because we have the internet that's enabling this level of connection worldwide, this is we're just now seeing the effects of that. I mean, we can see it manifest in the levels of depressions in the teenagers these days. I believe that that's a direct correlation because you're continuously exposed to people presenting their own very best images of themselves. You don't get to see the full spectrum of what normal life is because it's always like, here, I'm doing the best I can. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean,
it's not healthy.
Yeah, not at all. So going back to the question of, social media, will it end? Will we will we be stuck in social media, in this social media fever dream?
My guess is that there
long?
will be it will become a regulated market. Like, that's my gut, like, instinct. After the presidential election in 2016, Zuckerberg was called up to Congress to testify in front of a bunch of representatives. And
old people who just really didn't know much.
Yeah, the boomers, right? Who are ruining Facebook and ruining the internet.
Yeah.
But, like, when asked, like, why do we need to regulate Facebook? And he was said, yes, maybe we do need to regulate Facebook. And now his company is going to fight that tooth and nails, but I think that will need to come. If nothing else, it's just a matter of mental health.
As a member of the technological community and the Silicon Valley community, were you aware that this was happening? Did you know? Did you have a hunch? Did you look at Facebook and say, okay, something's wrong here? Or
yeah, like when I started seeing racist memes show up out of nowhere. Like, that's weird. Like the Black Lives Matter, that was promoted by Russian operatives because it will affect emotions on both sides, whether you're pro or against it. the football players in the U.S. taking kneels before the games in order to protest police brutality. Another example of that, promoted by Russian operatives
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm not. In order to foster political instability. Robert Mueller has indicted 1825 Russian intelligence officers as a direct result of their actions.
I did not know this Black Lives Matter thing.
Yeah.
Is this a fact?
Well, I mean, it's real people who are tired of getting there is obviously a problem with police brutality in the U.S. There's been a stark increase in militarization and police, that doesn't help keep us safe. It's fostering disagreements.
It was easy to polarize.
Exactly. Precisely.
It was really easy to polarize. So now the Colin Kaepernick thing, it turned into this pop culture meme, didn't it?
It did, yes.
And it's making money, isn't it?
Well, I know he just got hired by Nike as a spokesperson to, tens of millions of dollars.
Do you follow football?
Más o menos.
Más o menos? Okay, no, I'm just asking because I'd like to know where his career is headed.
Well, he's currently not playing for any NFL team. However, he's making a lot of money as a spokesperson for Nike.
What about music, Tyler? Where do you see music in the music market going? It's looking at Spotify and its valuation and its DPO back in April, I think. It was April or May.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I love Spotify. I think it's a great product. I am a paid Spotify subscriber because, got home from going out. I wanted to listen to Dark Side of the Moon. I don't have to carry an iPod around with me. If I don't have to use up the storage on my phone, I can just stream it as I need to.
I heard the valuation went down 9% since they IPO'd.
Well, they didn't do an IPO. They did a direct listing.
They did a direct listing,
and
yeah.
so that's kind of a novel, brand new way of putting your stock out there. I could see how that would be. There's a lot of hype amongst these Silicon Valley companies, even though Spotify's based out of Sweden, but I'll just put all of the technology companies in a big basket. The venture capital model, which is how you raise money for these early stage startups, is all based on the hype train. And that's why when you ask me where do I see this, how do we see this dealing with this issues, it's like technology will rule all because that's the mask we wear in the valley.
But it's also funny that you mentioned that because when you talk to the Spotify people, they'll tell you they're not a startup anymore. And when you talk to traditional businessmen about their DPO versus their valuation going down 9% and them losing money every quarter and actually depending on this venture capitalists.
Where's the sustainable model?
Right.
Yeah.
So they say, you talk to Mia Nygren in Miami, and she will tell you, dude, this is a 5,000 people company. We're not a startup anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk to my boss here, and he'll say, where's the money? How do they keep on losing and losing and losing money?
Up until last year, Amazon lost money every quarter, and that's the difference between revenue and profit. What Amazon's been doing for the last 15 years that they've been existing is taking all of their profit and reinvesting into the business in order to grow the machine. And so Spotify is trying to find that sustainable business model where they can no longer have to require that outside investment in order to, stay above. But, I pay for Spotify. I think they've done a remarkable job as far as consolidating the streaming scene within the music industry.
Are there any conversations that you've had the chance to sit and think back on after Colombia 4.0? Is there anything that you get out of this round of conversations that you've had with entrepreneurs and techies here in Bogotá?
So when I was presenting on stage, I wrapped up my presentation doing showing off on what's called I mentioned ICOs before, an initial coin offering smart contract. Fun fact, last year, the value of money raised through initial coin offerings exceeded that of the entire venture capital and seed stage startup, the traditional startup funding models. And so because it's peer-to-peer, it's not government regulated. I see it as a very powerful way for Colombian enterprises to be able to raise money in international markets. Yeah.
What did the government say?
Well, I was also approached by folks within the government who are very interested in blockchain because, as I understand it, the president ran on blockchain as part of his platform. And now their technologists, the Colombian technologists in the government, are trying to figure out how to use this effectively within the system.
Voting and distribution of resources in
Yeah.
ministries.
You may become an advisor to the president. Who knows?
There are discussions going on.
Listen, man, it's great to have you here in Bogota. Please come back. And
Don't you worry about that. I love Colombia.
and bring some coffee with you when you come back from Chinchina.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Muchas gracias.